Cold. That's the first thing I remember. Not the hands that shoved me. Not the laughter. Just the cold, sharp and merciless, swallowing me whole like I was nothing more than a stone tossed for sport. The water of Harper Lake closed over my head, and for a moment, everything went silent.
No voices. No words.
Just the muffled roar of my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. My lungs screamed. My dress clung to me like a shroud. And above the surface, through the distorted blur of green water, I could see them, Clara and her family, standing on that dock, doubled over with laughter. They thought it was funny. They thought I was finished. I clawed my way back up, gasping, choking on lake water and humiliation. My gray hair plastered to my face. My cardigan, the one Benjamin gave me 3 Christmases ago, heavy and ruined. I reached for the edge of the dock, my fingers scraping against the rough wood, and not a single hand reached back. Not one. Clara stood there with her arms crossed, that perfect smile still painted on her face. Her mother, Diane, whispered something behind a manicured hand. Her father chuckled low, like this was all part of some private joke I wasn't clever enough to understand. And my son, my Benjamin, he just stood there,
Silent.
frozen, looking at me like I was an embarrassment he wished he could erase. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you loved most, stick around. This story is for you. I dragged myself out of that lake alone. Water poured from my clothes, pooling at my feet. My whole body shook, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Something that burned hotter than shame. It was rage. Quiet, simmering, patient rage. They thought they'd drown me in shame. They thought this 71-year-old widow would slink away, tail between her legs, too broken to fight back. They thought I was weak because I was kind, poor because I was humble, powerless because I didn't flaunt what I had. They were wrong. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. See, the thing about people like the Harpers is they measure worth in dollar signs and square footage. They see a woman like me, simple clothes, no fancy car, no designer handbag, and they assume I'm beneath them. That I have nothing. That I am nothing. But they didn't ask the right questions. They didn't wonder why I never complained about money. Why I never seemed desperate, even after my husband died. Why I carried myself with a certain kind of peace they could never buy. They didn't know about my brother, Arthur Ellison.
Calm. Brilliant.
Ruthless when he needs to be. The kind of man who doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't have to. The kind of man who built an empire so quietly that people like the Harpers never saw him coming. And he loves me more than anything in this world. I stood there on that dock, dripping and shaking, and I looked each of them in the eye. Clara's smirk faltered just a little. Good. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder what that look on my face meant. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked away, my shoes squelching with every step, my head held high. They thought they'd won. But they didn't know my brother. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when my life was simple and full. When my kitchen smelled like fresh bread every Sunday morning. When Benjamin would sit at that old wooden table, telling me about his dreams while I poured him coffee. Just the two of us against the world after his father passed. I raised that boy with everything I had. Not money. We didn't have much of that. But love. Discipline. Values that mattered. I taught him to treat people with respect, to never look down on anyone, to measure success by character, not bank accounts.
He was a good man.
I made sure of that. Then Clara Harper walked into his life, like she owned it. She was beautiful, I'll give her that.
Polished.
The kind of woman who knew exactly how to tilt her head when she laughed, exactly which words would make a man feel like he'd won the lottery. Benjamin met her at some charity event his company sponsored. He came home that night with stars in his eyes. "Mom, I met someone," he said. "She's amazing." I smiled because he was happy. That's what mothers do. We smile even when something whispers wrong in the back of our minds. The first time I met Clara, she showed up at my house in a car that cost more than my mortgage. She walked through my door wearing heels that clicked against my worn linoleum like tiny judgments. Her eyes swept over my modest living room, the floral couch I'd had for 20 years, the family photos in drugstore frames, the crocheted blankets I made during long winter nights. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What a cozy little place," she said. The word little hung in the air like an insult wrapped in silk. Have you ever ignored your instincts, only to regret it later? Comment yes if that's ever happened to you.
I should have said something right then.
Should have pulled Benjamin aside and told him what I saw. But I didn't want to be that mother. The one who couldn't let go. The one who thought no woman was good enough for her son. So I kept quiet. Clara's family made their opinions clear from the start. Her mother, Diane, looked at me like I was a stain on expensive fabric. Her father, Richard, spoke to me in that slow, loud voice people use when they think you're stupid or deaf. At their engagement party, someone actually asked me if I was the caterer. I laughed it off. No, just the groom's mother. The woman's face went red. But Clara's mother just sipped her champagne and turned away. Benjamin started changing. Small things at first. He stopped dropping by on Sundays. Said he was busy with Clara's family events. Then he traded his sensible sedan for a luxury car he couldn't quite afford. Started wearing watches that cost more than I spent on groceries in 6 months. "You're working too hard, honey," I told him once. "You don't need to impress anyone." "It's not about impressing, Mom," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's about fitting in." Clara's world is different.
Different.
That word lodged in my chest like a splinter. I watched my son slip away inch by inch, trade by trade. His laugh changed.
His posture changed.
Even the way he hugged me changed, quicker, lighter, like he was already pulling away before he'd fully arrived. Clara never said anything cruel to my face.
She was too smart for that.
But she had ways. She'd plan family dinners and forget to invite me. She'd talk about expensive restaurants and exotic vacations, then say, "Oh, but I'm sure you prefer staying home, Margaret. At your age." At my age. Like 71 made me invisible. Irrelevant. Already buried. Something in her smile told me my kindness was her opportunity. I tried to hold on without holding too tight. Sent cards. Left voicemails that went unreturned. Showed up at their engagement party with a gift I'd saved months to buy, a beautiful picture frame, engraved with their names. Clara opened it in front of her friends and said, "Oh, how sweet. We'll find somewhere to put this." Then she set it aside and never mentioned it again. The wedding was worse. I sat in the third row while Clara's extended family filled the first two. During the reception, I ate dinner at a table with people I'd never met. Benjamin danced with Clara's mother, Clara's aunt, Clara's grandmother. He found me near the end of the night, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thanks for coming, Mom. Thanks for coming." Like I was a guest, not the woman who gave him life. I should have listened to that voice, the one that warned me storms were coming. The phone calls stopped first. I'd dial Benjamin's number on Sunday mornings, our old routine, and it would ring and ring before going to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Ben. Leave a message." His voice cheerful and distant, like he was talking to a stranger. "Hi, honey, it's Mom. Just calling to check in. Love you." He'd text back hours later.
Busy.
Talk soon. Soon never came. Then the holidays changed. Thanksgiving used to be at my house. I'd cook for days, turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie. Benjamin would show up early to help, stealing bites of sweet potato casserole when he thought I wasn't looking. We'd laugh. We'd remember his father. We'd give thanks for each other. That first Thanksgiving after the wedding, Clara called me. Not Benjamin.
Clara.
"Margaret, we're doing Thanksgiving with my family this year," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "It's kind of a Harper tradition. I'm sure you understand." I understood perfectly. Christmas.
Easter. His birthday.
Every occasion that used to be ours became theirs. I'd see photos on social media, Benjamin smiling at the Harper's long table, surrounded by people in expensive sweaters, holding wine glasses that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. I wasn't in any of those pictures. It was like losing my son while he was still alive. People talk about grief like it only comes with death. But there's another kind of grief. The kind where the person is still breathing, still walking around, still living their life. They just don't want you in it anymore. I'd lie awake at night wondering what I'd done wrong. Had I embarrassed him somehow? Said the wrong thing? Been too poor, too simple, too old? Don't forget to like this video if you believe fake kindness always hides something deeper. I saw him once at the grocery store. Pure chance. I was in the produce section squeezing avocados, and there he was by the fancy cheese display with Clara on his arm. My heart jumped. I started to call out, to wave, but something made me stop. Clara was talking, her hand on his arm, steering him past me like I was just another stranger blocking the aisle. Benjamin glanced my way. For a second, our eyes met. He saw me. I know he did. He looked away. They walked past. Clara didn't even notice me, but Benjamin's shoulders tensed. He knew. He knew he'd just pretended his own mother didn't exist. I stood there holding an avocado, my vision blurring, while other shoppers flowed around me like water around a stone. Months passed like that. Silent. Empty. I kept my routine. Went to church. Tended my garden. Had coffee with my friend Susan, who would pat my hand and say, "He'll come around, Maggie. Give him time." But time just made the distance wider. I'd see Clara's posts online. Pictures of their perfect life. Their renovated kitchen. Their vacation in Italy. Benjamin looking happy, in ways I didn't recognize. He smiled differently now. Posed differently. Even his clothes looked uncomfortable, like he was wearing someone else's life. I wanted to hate her. Some days I did. But mostly I just felt hollow. Like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that mattered. My brother Arthur called every week. "How are you holding up, Maggie?"
"I've fine, idillie."
"You're not fine. I can hear it in your voice." "He's just busy, Arthur. Young married life. It's normal." "This isn't normal. This is isolation. It's calculated." I didn't want to believe him. Believing it meant accepting that my son had chosen them over me, that the boy I'd raised, the man I'd shaped, could be turned into someone who'd look through me in a grocery store. Then came the invitation, too sudden, too sweet, to be real. The envelope was cream-colored. Expensive paper. The kind you could feel was costly the moment you touched it. Inside, in perfect calligraphy, "You're invited to a Harper family weekend at the lake house." My name was handwritten at the top. Margaret Ellison.
Not Mom.
Not Maggie. Margaret. I stared at it for a long time, sitting at my kitchen table. After 18 months of silence, suddenly I was invited? After missed holidays and ignored phone calls, now they wanted me there?
Susan said I shouldn't go.
It feels wrong, Maggie. Like a setup. But it was signed by Benjamin. His handwriting in the PS, "Please come, Mom. I miss you." Those 3 words undid me. I missed him too. So much it hurt to breathe sometimes. So I went. The Harper Lake house sat on 40 acres of private shoreline, all glass and wood and architectural ego. My old Toyota looked ridiculous in the circular driveway next to their Mercedes and BMWs. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, gathering courage, smoothing my simple blue dress. Clara opened the door before I could knock. "Margaret, you made it." Her smile was wide and perfect and empty. She air-kissed near my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. "Everyone's out back."
Come.
Everyone was her family. Her parents. Her brother and his wife. Her aunt and uncle. Her college friends. About 20 people total, all dressed in that casual expensive way where a simple shirt costs $300. Benjamin was by the grill with Clara's father, laughing at something Richard said. He looked up when I walked onto the deck.
"Mom."
"Hey." He hugged me quick and stiff. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, holding on a second longer than he did. "What would you have done in Maggie's shoes? Tell me in the comments." No one offered me a chair. I found one myself, off to the side, while conversations flowed around me like I was invisible. Clara's mother talked about their upcoming cruise. Her brother discussed his promotion. Someone mentioned a wine that cost $200 a bottle. I sipped ice water and tried to smile. Margaret, can you pass the napkins? Clara's aunt pointed without looking at me. I passed them. Of course. You're Benjamin's mother? One of Clara's friends asked, like she was confirming something unbelievable. Yes.
Oh,
She glanced at Clara, then back at me. How nice.
nice.
That word again. Hollow and dismissive. Dinner was worse. They'd set up long tables outside, overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a stage set for my humiliation. I was seated at the far end, between two people who spent the entire meal talking past me to each other. Benjamin sat near the middle, Clara on one side, her mother on the other. He caught my eye once and smiled apologetically. But he didn't move. Didn't come talk to me. Didn't include me in anything. I was decoration. A box checked. See, Clara could say, we invited his mother. We're not the bad guys. After dinner, they played lawn games. Expensive wine flowed. Laughter echoed across the perfect grass. I helped clear plates, carrying them into the enormous kitchen. No one thanked me. Clara's mother actually said, "Oh, you don't have to do that," but in a way that meant you're doing it wrong. Every smile hid a secret, and I was the punchline. The sun had almost set when it happened. They were all gathered by the dock, taking pictures. The lake was glass smooth, reflecting pink clouds. Someone had set up a professional camera on a tripod. Clara spotted me standing near the house. "Margaret, come join us for a picture." Everyone turned to look. Benjamin waved me over. "Come on, Mom." I walked down to the dock. My sensible shoes felt wrong on the polished wood. Everyone was arranged in perfect poses, bright and beautiful and belonging.
They made space for me at the edge.
Right at the very edge, where the dock met the water. Then Clara called out, "Margaret, come join us for a picture." I should have known. Should have seen it in the way they positioned me. In the way Clara's brother Marcus stood just a little too close behind me. In how everyone's smiles got sharper, more expectant, like they were waiting for something. The photographer counted down. 3, 2. On 1, Marcus's hands hit my back.
Hard.
Not a tap. Not an accident. A shove.
Time stretched out in that moment.
I felt my feet leave the dock. Felt gravity take over. Saw all their faces frozen in fake surprise. Then the water swallowed me whole.
Cold. So cold it stole my breath.
My dress ballooned around me, then stuck to my skin like cement. I went under, choking, and for a terrifying second I couldn't tell which way was up. My shoes felt like anchors. My cardigan pulled me down. When I broke the surface, gasping, the first thing I heard was laughter. Not concern. Not shock. Laughter. Clara had her hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking. Her mother was doubled over. Marcus was grinning like he'd just won something. Even Benjamin, my Benjamin, had his head thrown back, laughing. Not at Marcus. At me. If this part made your heart ache, drop a heartbreak emoji in the chat. You won't believe what happens next. I treaded water, my heart hammering, my lungs burning. Lake water filled my mouth, tasting of algae and betrayal. My hair plastered to my face. My dress tried to drown me. "Oh my God, Margaret." Clara called out, still laughing. "Are you okay?" Was I okay? Was I okay? I swam to the dock. Reached up. My fingers grabbed the rough wood. No one reached back. They stood there, watching me struggle. Benjamin had his phone out, probably making sure he got a good video. Clara's father shook his head, chuckling. Her mother whispered something to her aunt, both of them smirking. I pulled myself up alone, every muscle screaming. Water poured from my clothes, pooling on the dock. My whole body shook, cold, shock, rage. "It was just a joke," Marcus said, grinning. "Lighten up. A joke." They pushed a 71-year-old woman into a lake and called it a joke. I looked at my son. Water dripped from my nose, my chin, my fingertips. Benjamin met my eyes for half a second, then looked away. Ashamed, maybe. but not enough to say anything. Not enough to defend me. That's when something inside me broke. Not shattered. Broke clean, like a bone that sets itself differently when it heals. Stronger. Harder. I think I should go, I said. My voice came out steady.
Come.
Cold as the lake water soaking through my clothes. Oh, Margaret, don't be dramatic, Clara said. It was an accident. We both knew it wasn't. I walked past all of them, leaving wet footprints on their perfect deck. No one offered me a towel. No one apologized. Benjamin started to follow me, but Clara touched his arm and he stopped. I drove home in soaking clothes, shivering so hard my teeth chattered. The heater in my old Toyota barely worked. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my lips were blue. Inside, I peeled off the ruined dress and stood under a hot shower until my skin turned red. But I couldn't get warm. The cold had settled deeper than my bones. I wrapped myself in my oldest robe and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. At everything. They thought I was finished, but that was the moment I began. My phone sat on the nightstand. One contact. One call. That's all it would take. I picked it up. My fingers, still wrinkled from the lake, found the number I'd known by heart for 70 years. He answered on the first ring. Maggie. Arthur, I said. My voice cracked. I need you. No one offered me a hand. Arthur showed up at my door the next morning with coffee, and that look in his eyes. The one that meant someone had made a terrible mistake. My brother has always been different from me. Where I'm soft, he's steel. Where I forgive, he remembers. We grew up poor, sharing one bedroom in a house that leaked when it rained. I escaped through kindness. Arthur escaped through ambition. He built his first company at 23. Sold it at 30 for more money than our parents made in their entire lives. Then he built another. And another. By the time he was 50, Arthur Ellison was the kind of wealthy that doesn't show up on Forbes lists because he's smart enough to stay quiet. Tell me everything, he said, setting the coffee on my table.
So I did.
Every detail. The invitation. The dock. The push. The laughter. Benjamin's face. I try not to cry, but my voice betrayed me anyway. Arthur didn't interrupt. He just listened, his jaw getting tighter with each word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. The Harper family, he finally said. Richard Harper. Real estate development, correct?
Yes.
They're very successful. They think they are. Arthur pulled out his phone, fingers moving across the screen. Harper Development Group. 62 million in assets. Not bad. He looked up at me. Not nearly enough. Would you tell your family if you had a powerful ally like Arthur? Yes or no? Arthur, I don't want revenge. I just wanted you to know what happened. Maggie. He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. You're my baby sister. You're the only family I have that matters. And they humiliated you. Endangered you. In front of your own son. Benjamin didn't. Benjamin stood there and laughed. Don't make excuses for him. The truth of it hit me like a slap. He was right. Benjamin had laughed. Arthur squeezed my hand. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Maggie. I'm not that kind of man. But I am going to teach them something their money couldn't buy. What's that? Consequences. He stood up, kissed my forehead. You rest. Let your big brother handle this. Arthur, what are you going to do? He smiled. It wasn't cruel. It was something else. Something certain. Don't worry, Maggie. They'll learn. He said it like a promise, not a threat. Over the next week, Arthur visited 3 more times. He never told me his plans outright, but I could see the wheels turning. He'd sit at my kitchen table with his laptop, making calls in that calm voice of his. Numbers. Properties. Contracts. Words I didn't fully understand. There's a piece of land the Harpers want, he mentioned once. Prime development location. They've been negotiating for 8 months. And I bought it this morning. Paid cash. 30% over asking. He sipped his coffee. They'll have to find somewhere else to build their luxury condos. Arthur. They pushed my sister into a lake, Maggie. This is me being gentle. I should have felt guilty. Should have told him to stop. But something in me, something that had frozen in that cold water, felt warm for the first time in months. The thing about people like the Harpers, Arthur said, is they think their world is secure. They don't realize how many threads hold it together. And how easy those threads are to cut when you know where to look. You sound like a villain in a movie.
He laughed. No.
Villains hurt innocent people. I'm just removing protection from people who don't deserve it. I thought about that for a long time after he left. Revenge versus justice. Cruelty versus consequence. The line felt thinner than I'd expected. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Marcus's hands on my back.
Hearing that laughter.
Feeling Benjamin's silence, like a blade. Maybe Arthur was right. Maybe some people needed to learn the hard way. And when Arthur makes a promise, the world tends to listen. The first crack appeared 2 weeks later. I heard about it from Susan, who heard it from her daughter, who worked at the same country club as Clara's mother. The Harper Development Group had lost a major contract. Some luxury resort project they'd been counting on. The investors pulled out suddenly, no explanation given. Diane Harper was furious, Susan said over coffee. Apparently someone bought the land right out from under them. I sipped my tea and said nothing. The second crack came a week after that. The Harpers' primary supplier for construction materials suddenly couldn't fulfill their orders. Something about existing contracts taking priority. Their projects ground to a halt. Deadlines missed. Penalties incurred. Arthur called me that evening. How are you feeling?
Fine.
You?
Busy.
Interesting thing happened today. I bought a small supply company. Nice little outfit. Does good work.
Pause.
They used to work exclusively with Harper Development. Arthur. They still can. If the Harpers want to pay market rate like everyone else. But those sweetheart deals Richard was getting? Those ended today. Hit like if you believe karma always finds its way, even in silence. I should have told him to stop. The words formed in my mouth a dozen times. But I never said them, because every time I tried, I remembered. The cold water, the laughter, Benjamin's face turning away, and the words died on my tongue. Arthur didn't destroy.
He didn't need to.
He just removed advantages. Closed doors. Made things fair. If the Harpers were truly as successful as they claimed, they'd survive. Right? But they weren't. They were leveraged. Overextended. Their empire built on connections and deals and privileges that crumbled when someone more powerful said no. Arthur didn't raise his voice. He raised their costs. The third crack was the bank. The Harpers had loans. Big ones. And banks get nervous when projects fail and contracts disappear. Suddenly their interest rates weren't so favorable. Their credit lines weren't so generous. I started having nightmares. Not about the lake anymore. About what I was allowing to happen. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, my heart racing, thinking about Benjamin. He worked for his father-in-law's company. If the company failed, Arthur, maybe you should stop, I said one afternoon. Why? Because Benjamin let his wife's family push you into a lake. He stood there and laughed, Maggie. Have you heard from him since? Has he called? Apologized? He hadn't. Not once. He's still my son. And you're still my sister. The only person who visited me in the hospital when I had pneumonia at 12. The only one who believed in me when I said I'd make something of myself. The person who loaned me $2,000 from her savings to start my first business. His voice cracked. You think I forgot that?
Ide forgotten.
It was 30 years ago. You made me who I am, Maggie. And I will not stand by while people treat you like garbage. I cried after that call. Not because I wanted him to stop. Because I wasn't sure I did. The moral weight of it pressed down on me like stones. I went to church that Sunday and couldn't focus on the sermon. All I could think about was justice versus revenge. Forgiveness versus consequences. They need to learn, I whispered to myself. Or maybe to God. I wasn't sure anymore. Arthur's last move was the most devastating. He found out about a zoning issue with the Harper's flagship project. Nothing illegal. They'd followed the rules. But rules can change. Especially when someone influential suggests to the right people that maybe the environmental impact needs a second look. The project was delayed. Indefinitely. Richard Harper's company couldn't survive much more. Everyone knew it. The whispers at the country club. The awkward silences at business lunches. The Harpers were failing. And soon, their empire began to crumble from within. Benjamin called on a Tuesday. I almost didn't answer. His name on my phone screen made my hands shake. 3 months since the lake. 3 months of silence. Now, suddenly, he wanted to talk? Mom. His voice sounded tired.
Strained.
Can we meet? We met at a diner halfway between our houses. Neutral ground. He looked thinner. Older. His expensive suit couldn't hide the stress in his eyes. How are you? He asked. Fine. The word came out cold. I didn't try to warm it. He ordered coffee he didn't drink. Just stirred it, watching the spoon go around and around. Things have been tough lately. I heard. Richard's company is falling apart. I don't understand it. Everything's going wrong at once. Contracts disappearing. Suppliers backing out. The bank breathing down our necks. He looked up at me. It's like someone's sabotaging us. Share this story if you think silence can be more powerful than shouting. I met his eyes and said nothing. Clara's mother thinks someone has a vendetta. But we don't have enemies. Richard's always been fair in business. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Anyway, I might lose my job. We might lose the house. Clara's been... He trailed off. She's been what? Different. When things were good, she was one way. Now that things are hard, she's... He rubbed his face. I don't know who I married, Mom. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. The other part, the mother part, just hurt for him. Why did you call me, Benjamin? Because I needed to talk to someone who...
He stopped.
Started again. Clara's family blames me. Like their company failing is somehow my fault. And I just kept thinking about you. About how things used to be. Before you let them push me into a lake? His face went white. Mom, that was... a joke? An accident. My voice rose despite myself. I called you 17 times after that, Benjamin. 17. You never called back. Clara said you were being dramatic. That you'd embarrassed her family by making a scene. I made a scene by nearly drowning. Silence. Long and heavy. I should have called, he finally said. I should have checked on you. I should have. His voice cracked. I should have done a lot of things differently. I watched my son cry into his coffee at a cheap diner, and my heart broke all over again. Not for the humiliation. For the boy he used to be, the man I'd raised him to become, and the stranger he'd let himself turn into. Benjamin. I waited until he looked at me. Do you remember what your father used to say? About character? Character is who you are when no one's watching.
No.
When everyone's watching and it costs you something to do the right thing. That's character. I took a breath. You had a choice that day. Stand with your mother or stand with them. You chose them. I know.
Do you?
Because you're here now that their money's gone. Now that things are hard. Where were you when things were easy? He had no answer for that. We sat in silence for a while. The diner hummed around us. Other people's conversations. Other people's normal lives. Mom, do you? He hesitated. Do you know who's doing this to Richard's company? I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Saw the fear there. The suspicion. He asked if I knew who was behind their collapse. I smiled and said, maybe life just got tired of pretending. The foreclosure notice went up on the Harper Lake house 6 weeks later. Arthur called to tell me. It goes to auction next month. I thought you should know. Why would I want to know that? Because I'm going to buy it. And I want to know what you'd like me to do with it. My first instinct was to say sell it. Burn it down. Anything but keep that place standing. But something stopped me. Can I see it first? I asked. We drove out together on a gray November morning. The property looked different without all those expensive cars in the driveway. without the laughter and the lights and the fake perfect happiness. It looked empty. Just a building. Just a place. Arthur unlocked the door. He'd already made arrangements to view it. We walked through in silence. The grand living room. The gourmet kitchen. The deck overlooking the lake. I stood on that deck and looked at the water. Gray and choppy today, nothing like the glass-smooth surface it had been that evening. The dock where they'd pushed me stretched out into the lake like an accusation. "What do you think?" Arthur asked. "What would you have done with that lake house? Sell it or redeem it? Comment below." "I think," I said slowly, "that this place has only known selfishness. Only known people who took and never gave, who hurt and never healed. So we sell it."
No.
I turned to look at him. "We change it." That's how Gracehaven was born. Arthur bought the property for less than half what the Harpers had paid. We spent the winter renovating. Not fancy, we stripped out the pretension. Made it warm, welcoming.
Real.
We turned it into a retreat. A place for women who'd been through hard things.
Divorce. Abuse. Loss.
Women who needed quiet and peace and someone to tell them they mattered. We opened in spring. The first guest was a woman named Patricia who'd left her husband after 30 years. She sat on that same deck, looking at that same lake, and cried. But not from pain. From relief. "I feel like I can breathe here," she said. By summer, we were fully booked. Women came and went, carrying their hurts and leaving them in the water. The lake that had tried to drown me became a place of healing. I hired staff. Good people who understood what we were trying to do. We offered the retreat on a sliding scale. Pay what you can. Arthur covered the difference. He never complained about the cost. "Best investment I ever made," he said. The Harpers lost everything. The company. The houses. The cars. The country club memberships. All of it gone. Clara's parents moved to a small apartment in a different state. Her brother took a job in sales. The mighty Harper empire reduced to nothing. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Benjamin left Clara that fall. Or maybe she left him. The details didn't matter. He moved into a studio apartment and took a job at a company that had nothing to do with real estate.
He didn't call me.
Not yet. But I wasn't waiting anymore. The same water that nearly took my life now reflected my strength. I stood on the dock one evening in late September, watching the sunset paint the lake gold and pink. Behind me, Gracehaven glowed with warm light. Inside, 6 women were healing, growing, learning they were stronger than they knew. Arthur came to stand beside me. "You did good, Maggie." "We did good."
No.
"This was you." I just moved some pieces around. "You're the one who turned revenge into redemption." Maybe he was right. I'd started this wanting justice. Ended up creating grace. But one person still had to face what he'd allowed. Benjamin showed up on a Saturday in October. I was in the garden behind Gracehaven, pulling weeds, when I heard the car. I knew the sound of it, his old sedan, the one he'd had before Clara convinced him to upgrade. He'd gone back to it after the divorce. He got out slowly, stood there looking at the property. At the sign, Gracehaven, a place of healing. I stood up, brushed dirt from my knees, and waited. "Mom." He walked toward me, hands in his pockets. "I heard about this place. About what you did with the lake house. News travels. I should have come sooner. Should have called after that day at the diner. Should have." He stopped.
Took a breath.
"Should have done everything differently from the beginning." I said nothing. Let him fill the silence. I was ashamed of how I treated you, of who I became, of everything. His voice broke. "I let them change me, Mom. Let them convince me that you weren't enough, that your life wasn't enough, that I had to be someone different to matter. And now I know the truth. They didn't make me better. They made me cruel. And I don't know how to fix that." The old me would have rushed to comfort him, would have said it's okay, you're forgiven, let's move forward. But I'd learned something in that cold lake. Sometimes love means letting people sit with their choices. You can't fix it, Benjamin. You can only do better going forward. He nodded. Tears rolled down his face. I don't expect you to forgive me.
Good.
Because forgiveness isn't something you expect. It's something you earn. We stood there in my garden, mother and son, with a year of hurt between us. I'm sorry, he finally said. For all of it.
For choosing them.
For laughing. For not calling. For being too weak to stand up for my own mother.
I'm sorry.
He wept, but I saw the boy I once knew beneath the man he'd become. I stepped forward and hugged him. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the hurt was gone. But because he was still my son. And somewhere under all those mistakes was the person I'd raised him to be. You have a lot of work to do, I said into his shoulder. I know. Starting with figuring out who you actually are. Not who Clara wanted. Not who I want. Who you are. How do I do that? The same way anyone does. By making better choices. By living with integrity. By treating people right. I pulled back to look at him. By remembering that character is who you are when it costs you something to do the right thing. He smiled through his tears.
Dad's line.
Your father's wisdom. Time you started using it. We talked for an hour after that. Really talked. He told me about the divorce, the job, the tiny apartment where he was rebuilding his life from scratch. I told him about Grace Haven, about the women we'd helped, about finding purpose in pain. Can I come back? He asked. Not today.
But sometime.
Can I be part of your life again? That depends on you. On whether you mean what you say. On whether you're willing to show up consistently. Not just when it's convenient. I will. I promise. Promises. I'd heard those before. But I saw something different in his eyes this time. Humility. Humbleness. The beginning of wisdom. As he drove away, I stood on the dock one last time. The place where they'd tried to break me. The place where everything changed. Arthur was right. I'd turned revenge into redemption. But more than that, I'd learned something about power. Real power isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself or prove anything. Real power is quiet, patient,
strategic.
And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so complete in yourself that their opinions stop mattering. The same place where they tried to drown me became the place where I found my peace and their downfall. I walked back toward Grace Haven, where women waited who needed to hear that they were strong enough to survive their own cold waters. Who needed to know that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. That you can take the worst thing that ever happened and turn it into the best thing you ever did. Behind me, the lake reflected the sunset. Peaceful, beautiful, redeemed. Just like me. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because sometimes justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be right. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story, and please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. You never know who you might inspire with your story. We'll see you in the next one, and remember, you're stronger than you think.